When I think of the word home, I think of my own place. My favorite place where I get to live by choice, where I feel safe, where I feel comfortable.
When you think of home, what comes to mind? Who's there? Who's not there? What do you need to feel comfortable, safe, and even thrive? The Center for Public Integrity, in collaboration with State of Mind, a partnership between Slate and Arizona State University and USC's Annenberg's Center for Health Journalism, hosted a discussion featuring disabled storytellers and a panel of disability advocates who dove into the challenges of finding appropriate homes for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. The panel was moderated by journalist Amy Silverman, who wrote a story last year for Public Integrity about how difficult it is to find safe housing for people with complex intellectual and developmental disabilities. The panel featured Patricia Jones, a person with a developmental disability who has been a part of the independent living movement since the 1990s. Jones shared her personal experience finding support living independently.
What's the most important thing that you've gotten? The most important help that you've gotten over the years that helped you live independently?
Oh, wow. Well, I would say I've had support from a lot of different levels. I've had some support from some people who opened doors for me, I would say, who were in positions of being able to open doors for me, that believed in me and believed in what I had to offer. And so I got a lot of opportunities based on the fact that, based on people's beliefs in me. One of them was when I worked at the Center for Disability Law, when Perry Jude Radisick was the executive director. She was a staunch supporter of mine, I would say, and really helped me to have some confidence in myself, I would say.
It sounds like it's a matter of finding support on a lot of levels, family, yes, friends, and also individuals that you encounter. So not always government help. No. So
I was not,
sorry, go on.
I was not ever, I do not receive DDD services. We didn't really have that mechanism that way back in Pennsylvania. I never grew up with those kind of services, so I found my supports in the people around me.
Finding affordable housing in today's economy is challenging for many Americans, but it can be even more of a challenge to find affordable housing that is also safe and accessible. Zoe Gross, Director of Advocacy at the Autistic Self Advocacy Network, says that programs that support affordable housing are underfunded, especially disability-specific programs.
There's currently no housing market in the U.S. where someone can afford a safe, decent apartment on SSI income without rental assistance. And there's also no place in the U.S. where there is enough affordable housing for the amount of people who are on rental assistance and need affordable housing. Programs that provide affordable housing are underfunded, especially disability-specific programs. And these programs tend to be small and have a hard time connecting to the people who need them. And then, of course, very few homes are accessible. Under 1% are wheelchair accessible. And then there's other kinds of disabilities that need home modifications as well. So very few homes overall. There's historically been a lot of resistance to autistic people living in the community. A lot of housing models that people are still pursuing today focus on group homes, or it can wind up replicating aspects of institutional living. And these models can isolate people from the rest of the community, as well as being really expensive, too expensive for most people. Finally, there's challenges with ensuring access to supports. Obviously, supports are different from housing, but supports can have an effect on what housing is available to us. Obviously, getting home and community-based services makes it easier to live in the community. but we still have challenges finding enough HCBS providers and funding for those services. Like Amy said, there are wait lists in many states. And additionally, there's a shortage of direct service providers. So the lack of accessible and affordable housing, just bringing all these things together, the lack of accessible and affordable housing means people may have to move significant distances to find a good home, and that can disconnect them from services, especially if they move states, as well as moving them far from family and friends who they may get support from as well.
Having access to different types of support is essential to the success of disabled community members being able to thrive.
There's still a huge amount left to do. It's important to note there are some approaches to providing housing that we want to steer clear of. Often people talk about housing in a way that connects housing and services or encourage people to get services that are tied to their housing. We want to stay away from that because it's important for people to be able to live where they want and still get the services they need. And if services are tied to housing, then people can't move without losing services or can't change service providers without moving. So it can trap people in either a housing situation or with a service provider that they don't want to be with. At the same time, access to supports is a really important part of people maintaining independence and being able to live where they want to live. This means that full funding for home and community-based services and better pay for the direct support workforce is a huge part of ensuring that people with disabilities can live in the community. We also want to look at accessibility of communities more broadly, how people access services and transportation, how easy it is to move within the community, even things like landlord-tenant laws or other laws that may determine whether people are at risk of evictions. All these things can have an impact on whether people can get and keep housing in the community. Finally, like I talked about, there's little affordable housing at the moment, and rental assistance isn't keeping up with demand. So funding affordable housing programs is really important, especially programs that help people with disabilities who are leaving institutions or at risk of entering institutions.
Becca Monteleone, who is an assistant professor of disability studies at the University of Toledo, says measuring success goes beyond just measuring how many people are living independently. It's also about the quality of their lives in their community.
The very beginning of the deinstitutionalization movement in the 60s and 70s, the kind of metric that's been used to measure success is the type of housing that people live in, right? So there is now this kind of embedded assumption that if we move people from this category to this category, then every person has a better experience now. And because of that, we're not often thinking about what's happening internally in this category of now kind of community living, right? That I pull from the National Core Indicators. It's a survey that's done every year with people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And the most recent data that they have, 11% of the people that they surveyed reported that they, quote, often feel lonely. And so this idea that just being physically in a community gives you community is one that isn't necessarily correct, right? And so I think moving away from saying that this kind of housing is how we solve the problem, these percentage of people who live there, now check mark, we're done, I think is something that we have to move toward, right? So thinking about the ways that people are still extremely isolated, I think we cannot rely on policy systems to save us. And so I think that we are all accountable for building the kinds of communities that we want to see. There are tons of training programs and skill building programs and self-advocacy programs for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And I think often the assumption in those programs is that if you learn all these skills, then you will be successful out in the community. And I think that's a little dishonest because there are other people who are culpable in that system. We need to work toward building the kinds of futures that we want. And that involves doing more than just supporting someone to build independent living skills. It means that, if you don't have a disability, you are also responsible for creating a community in which people with disabilities are welcome.
Home is the Shire, in Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit. Warm hearth, enough food for weeks, maps and books to explore. But also, home is Narnia, from the Chronicles of Narnia. Snow, spring, and different creatures to talk to. And there's food in the tents before the battle happening.
Our website features full videos from our storytellers sharing about what home means to them. And visit us on YouTube to watch the entire panel discussion.